You think you know the people closest to you. You trust them. You build a life with them. But what if one day, they just walk out? No warning. No explanation. And when they do, they leave behind something far more dangerous than heartbreak. This isn't a story about love lost. It's a story about deception. Secrets hidden behind perfect smiles. Betrayal that cuts so deep it changes you forever. I thought I had it all, a happy marriage, a steady job. But one ordinary evening, everything shattered with 4 words, I'm leaving for him. That's where my story begins. But what started as heartbreak uncovered something darker, something deadly. I guess I should start by saying I never saw it coming. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. Looking back, the signs were there, small cracks I ignored. I thought we were unbreakable. But life has a way of proving you wrong when you least expect it. Marie and I met at a tech conference 5 years ago. She was the charismatic developer who lit up every room. I'll never forget that first moment, bright smile, confident posture, eyes full of curiosity. We hit it off instantly. 1 year later, we were married, moving into a cozy apartment outside Los Angeles. Life was perfect, or so I thought. Working at the same company didn't bother us. Marie was in development, I was in finance. People joked about how lucky we were. You get to work together and still go home to each other. What's your secret? I'd laugh it off. To me, Marie was the same vibrant woman I fell in love with, friendly, social, maybe a little too flirty. But nothing felt wrong. At least, that's what I told myself. Then came Michael. Our company announced a new chief information officer. The buzz around him was impossible to ignore, tech genius, innovator, a leader who always got results. When he walked into our office, you could feel the shift in the air. People whispered about him, the charisma, the suits, the way he commanded attention. I didn't think much of it. Why would I? Marie and I were solid. We were happy. At least, that's what I thought. But then I started hearing comments. Marie seems to spend a lot of time in Michael's office. He really favors her for big projects. I brushed it off. She thrived on challenges. Of course, she'd gravitate toward the new CIO. It was harmless, right? Until it wasn't. One evening, I came home to find a packed suitcase by the door. Marie stood there, eyes red, expression distant. I'm moving out, she said, her voice hollow. For a moment, I couldn't process it. What? Marie, what are you talking about? Her words shattered everything I thought I knew. I've been seeing Michael. It's serious. I'm moving in with him. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I wanted to scream, to ask why, to beg her to stay. But no words came out. I stood there, frozen. Watching the woman I trusted completely walk out the door. And the worst part? I never saw it coming. Or maybe I just didn't want to. Wait, I finally croaked out. You're leaving me? For him? Marie didn't flinch. No guilt. No hesitation. Just that blank expression, like she was already gone. I've made my decision, Andrew. I didn't want it to happen this way, but it did. I clung to that word, desperate for it to mean something. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Marie sighed, rubbing her temples. It did. But people change. I changed. Michael makes me feel alive. Like I've been missing something all this time. Alive? Her words echoed in my head, turning everything we built, our mornings, late-night talks, future plans, into a cruel joke. She picked up her suitcase and moved toward the door. That's when the harsh reality hit me, she wasn't coming back. Is this because of me? I blurted. Was I not enough? She paused at the door. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I married, the one who once looked at me like I was her whole world. "It's not you," she said softly. "You're a good man, Andrew. But sometimes, love, just isn't enough." And with that, she walked out, leaving me standing in the doorway, trying to hold on to pieces already slipping through my fingers. The days that followed were a blur. I barely ate. I barely slept. Every room reminded me of her packing her bags, her distant stare. I replayed every moment from the past 6 months, searching for clues I must have missed. Every conversation. Every glance. Every excuse to stay late at work. It was driving me mad. Work wasn't much better. The office felt like a prison. Whispers followed me everywhere. Michael. Untouchable, acting as if nothing happened. I wanted to quit. But the bills didn't stop just because your life fell apart. It wasn't long before my best friends, Franklin and Matt, noticed something was off. When I skipped poker night for the 3rd week, they showed up at my apartment unannounced. "Dude," Franklin said, stepping inside. "You look like death warmed over." Matt followed with a 6-pack. "And your fridge is empty. What's going on?" I tried to brush them off, but Franklin grabbed my shoulders and sat me down. "Talk." The words spilled out before I could stop them. "She left me. Marie. She's with someone else." A heavy silence followed. Matt finally spoke, his voice cautious. "Michael?" My head snapped up. "You knew?" He shook his head quickly. "Not for sure. But people talked. There were rumors." I didn't want to believe it. Franklin cursed under his breath. "What the hell is wrong with her? You've been nothing but good to her." I sat there, hollow. I keep thinking, if I'd done something differently, maybe she wouldn't have. "Stop," Matt cut in sharply. "This isn't your fault, Andrew. She made her choice. That's on her." Franklin nodded. "You need to stop blaming yourself. And you need to stop letting her control your life. She's gone, man. Pick yourself up." Easier said than done. But as the night wore on, and the beers kicked in, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could get through this. Maybe. Then my phone buzzed. An email. From Marie. I stared at the notification like it might explode. Franklin noticed. "Who's that?" "It's her." Matt leaned over. "Are you going to open it?" I hesitated. What good could come from it? What could she possibly say to undo the damage? But pain makes you crave answers, even when you know they'll hurt. Curiosity won. I opened the email. Email subject, "I'm sorry. From Marie. To Andrew. Andrew. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to say this. I'm sorry. For everything. I've been lost for a long time. Michael, help me see what I was missing. Please don't think this is your fault. You're a good man. But I couldn't keep living a lie." I read the email twice. Then a 3rd time. My hands shook as I lowered the phone. "She's sorry," I murmured, my voice hollow. She felt lost. Michael helped her find herself. Franklin snorted. "Oh, come on. What a load of crap." Matt shook his head. Classic cheater move. They blamed their feelings to justify selfish choices. I wanted to defend her, but the words wouldn't come. Deep down, I knew Matt was right. "She didn't even ask how I was doing," I whispered. "It's all about her." Franklin handed me another beer. "Because she doesn't care, man. She's already moved on. Now you've got to do the same." I sipped the beer, but the bitterness inside me ran far deeper. For days, the email haunted me. I kept rereading it, dissecting every word. Was she truly sorry? Or just easing her own guilt? Then, one night, I made a decision. I needed answers. Closure. The next morning, I stood outside her new apartment. It wasn't hard to find, mutual friends had mentioned it. My heart pounded as I rehearsed what to say. I tried to picture her reaction, guilt, anger, surprise, but nothing prepared me for what actually happened. Before I could knock, the door opened. And there she was. Marie froze when she saw me, her eyes widening in surprise. She looked different. Happier. More radiant. It made me sick. Andrew, she breathed. What are you doing here? I need to talk, I said, forcing my voice steady. I need answers. Her gaze flickered with hesitation, but she nodded. Okay. Come in. The apartment was modern, neat, more her than us. 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table beside an open bottle. I clenched my jaw. Expecting company? Marie glanced at the glasses, then shook her head. Michael was here earlier. Of course, he was. I took a deep breath, controlling the storm brewing inside me. Why, Marie? Why him? She sat down, rubbing her hands nervously. I told you in my email. I felt lost. And Michael, he understood me. Understood you? I repeated, anger rising. He's your boss. How does that turn into this? Marie looked down. At first, it was just conversations. He made me feel seen. I laughed bitterly. And what was I? Invisible? No. You weren't invisible. But, you got comfortable, Andrew. Our life became routine. I started to feel like I was just going through the motions. I shook my head. So instead of talking to me, you ran into his arms. Marie opened her mouth to respond, but the front door clicked open. And there he was. Michael. Tall. Confident. His gaze flicked from Marie to me. For a brief moment, I saw surprise flash across his face. Then, just as quickly, it vanished behind a mask of calm indifference. Oh, he said smoothly, closing the door. I didn't realize you had company. Marie stood quickly. Andrew just stopped by. We were talking. Michael walked in casually, like he owned the place. Like he owned her. He placed a hand on Marie's shoulder. Something inside me snapped. Talking, he repeated with a smirk. About what? About us, I snapped back, my voice cold. About how you walked into our lives and destroyed everything. Michael didn't flinch. His smirk only widened. Destroyed? He tilted his head, amused. I wouldn't put it that way. Michael met my gaze, unflinching. People grow apart, Andrew. You and Marie weren't meant to last. She needed more. And I gave it to her. My blood boiled. You're a coward, I said through clenched teeth. You used your position to manipulate her. Michael chuckled. Manipulate? Marie made her own choices. Isn't that right? I turned to her, my voice rising. Marie? She glanced between us, panic flashing in her eyes. I didn't. Stop. I raised my hand. Don't you dare defend him. Her composure cracked, guilt shadowing her face. But Michael? Unfazed. I'm not here to argue, he said calmly. Maybe it's time you accept it and move on. Move on. I laughed bitterly. You think it's that easy? You walk in, take my wife, and I'm just supposed to move on. Michael shrugged. You'll be better off in the long run. Trust me. That condescending tone pushed me over the edge. You think you've won? I said, my voice low. You think you've taken everything from me. But you don't know me, Michael. You don't know what I'm capable of. His smirk faltered, just for a second. Is that a threat? No, I stepped closer. It's a promise. The tension was suffocating. Marie stood frozen. Michael broke the silence first. Be careful, Andrew. You don't want to do something you'll regret. I locked eyes with him. The only thing I regret is ever trusting either of you. I turned on my heel, slamming the door behind me. But the anger inside me refused to fade. As I drove away, I tried to calm down. Then, something caught my eye. Another car pulled up outside their apartment. I slowed, my heart pounding. The driver stepped out. Franklin. My friend. My colleague. What the hell was he doing there? I slammed on the brakes, my car skidding to a stop. I watched as Franklin adjusted his jacket and strolled to the apartment like he belonged there. Like he hadn't spent months telling me to move on. He knocked once, then opened the door without waiting. Marie appeared, startled at first, then smiled. They hugged. Like they'd done it 100 times before. My thoughts spiraled. Were they all in on it? Had I been too blind to see? I waited. For an hour, I sat in my car, watching. When Franklin finally left, he walked out casually. Like he didn't have a care in the world. I wasn't about to let this go. I followed him. Franklin's car pulled into our regular bar. I parked a few spots away and followed him inside. He sat at our usual table, scrolling through his phone, a beer in hand. At first, he didn't notice me. But when I slid into the booth across from him, his head snapped up. Andrew, he said, startled. What are you doing here? I stared at him, my expression blank. I could ask you the same thing. Franklin frowned. What do you mean? I leaned in. I saw you, Franklin. I saw you go to their apartment. His face went pale. Gotcha. Andrew, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I demanded, my voice cutting through the low hum of the bar. You've been telling me to move on, while sneaking around behind my back. Franklin opened his mouth but said nothing. His silence said it all. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh my God. You knew. You knew about her and Michael. Franklin lowered his gaze. I found out a few months ago. A few months? I froze. You thought I wouldn't figure it out? That you could pretend everything was fine? I was trying to protect you, he said quietly. Protect me? I scoffed. You protected them. You lied to my face. Andrew. Save it. You were supposed to be my friend. I am your friend, he insisted. But I thought if you focused on moving forward, you wouldn't spiral. Well, congratulations. I laughed hollowly. I'm spiraling now. The silence between us grew suffocating. Finally, I spoke again. Why were you there tonight? Franklin hesitated. Marie asked me to check on you. Marie? My blood boiled. She's worried about me. She's worried you're not doing well, he said. I stood abruptly. I don't need her pity. And I don't need yours. Franklin reached for my arm. Andrew, wait. But I was already out the door. The cold night air hit me like a slap. I sucked in a breath, trying to steady myself. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A text. From Matt. We need to talk. Call me when you're alone. Engaged? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. She's engaged to him. Matt nodded. I didn't know how to tell you. Franklin found out a few weeks ago. It's been kept quiet, company policy. They're planning a future, I said bitterly. While I'm here, picking up the pieces of my life. The rage inside me boiled over. She hadn't just left me for another man, she was building a new life with him. I stood abruptly. I need air. Outside, I paced, images of Marie in a wedding dress swirling in my mind. The thought made my stomach churn. They'd stolen my life. My future. And now they were celebrating it. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over her name. Part of me wanted to call her. Demand answers. But what was the point? Then another thought struck me. Franklin. He knew. He'd known all along. Without thinking, I dialed his number. It rang twice before he picked up. Andrew? We need to talk, I said coldly. Okay. Where? Your place. Now. 20 minutes later, I stood in Franklin's living room, arms crossed. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. About the engagement. About everything. Franklin sighed, rubbing his neck. I was trying to protect you. You let me sit in the dark while they moved on with their lives. I didn't want you to get hurt more. Well, congratulations. I glared at him. I'm furious. Franklin met my gaze. You have every right to be. But listen, this isn't just about you and Marie. What are you talking about? Franklin took a deep breath. Matt told you about Michael, right? About the people who disappeared? I nodded slowly. Yeah. There's more, Franklin said, handing me a folder. Reports from a private investigator. Names, incidents, all tied to Michael. It's not just affairs. There are whispers of fraud, blackmail, even violence. Each page I flipped through weighed heavier. Michael wasn't just a manipulator, he was dangerous. Marie isn't the first woman he's done this to, Franklin added. He finds vulnerable women, draws them in, and controls them. I swallowed hard. So, what do we do? We expose him, Franklin said. But we need more proof. And Marie? I whispered. Franklin's gaze softened. We save her, whether she wants us to or not. Franklin's phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. It's Matt, he said, answering. His expression shifted from confusion to shock. Wait, what? He stood abruptly. Are you serious? What is it? I pressed. Matt's frantic voice came through the speaker. I found a marriage license. Marie and Michael aren't just engaged, they're already married. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Married? I whispered. When? About a month ago, Matt said. A private ceremony. No family, no friends. And they used her maiden name, Marie Thompson. That doesn't make sense, I muttered. Michael's covering his tracks, Matt explained. He's hiding her, or protecting her. Franklin sighed. This is getting worse by the minute. There's more, Matt added. Michael's been married twice before. Both marriages ended suddenly. And both women disappeared. The word disappeared hung in the air like a death sentence. Marie wasn't just another affair. She was his next victim. We need to get her out of there, I said, standing abruptly. Franklin grabbed my arm. Andrew, wait. We need a plan. There's no time, I snapped. If we wait, she could end up like the others. The drive to Michael's apartment was tense, the weight of what we were about to do hanging heavy in the air. As we approached, my heart pounded. Franklin parked a few houses down, glancing at me. Ready? I nodded. But before we could move, the door to Michael's apartment flew open. Marie stormed out, suitcase in hand, her face twisted in anger. Michael followed her, grabbing her arm. "Marie, wait. Don't touch me," she yelled, yanking her arm free. Franklin and I froze, watching from the car as Marie stormed out with a suitcase. "I trusted you," she shouted at Michael. "You've been lying to me." Michael's voice was calm, yet menacing. "I did it for us." "For us?" Marie scoffed. "You've ruined my life. I'm done." As she turned to leave, I jumped out of the car. "Marie." Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Andrew." "Get in the car," I said urgently, glancing at Michael. But before she could move, Michael pulled out a gun. "Marie, get down!" I yelled, sprinting toward her. Franklin tackled her as a shot rang out, shattering a car window. Michael aimed again, but I was already charging. We collided, the gun clattering to the pavement. He threw a punch, but rage fueled me. I grabbed his collar, slamming him into the wall. "Why?" I growled. "Why her? Why any of them?" Michael smirked, blood dripping from his mouth. "Because I could." That answer ignited my fury. My fist clenched, ready to strike. "Andrew! Don't!" Franklin's voice cut through. I turned. Marie sat on the curb, trembling, tears streaming down her face. Franklin stood between her and the gun, kicking it out of reach as sirens grew louder. Michael chuckled darkly. "You think this ends with me in handcuffs? I'll be out in no time." I slammed him into the wall again. "You're done." The police swarmed the scene, dragging Michael into a squad car. He shot me one last glare. "See you around, Andrew." I didn't flinch. Marie sat on the curb, shaking. I knelt beside her. "You saved me," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. Her gaze was distant. "I thought I could handle it. At first, it was exciting. But he controlled everything. I was trapped. Why didn't you come to me?" Tears filled her eyes. "I was ashamed. And I didn't think you'd care, not after what I did to you." "I cared," I said softly. "I always cared." Her sobs broke through. Weeks passed in a blur of police interviews and court proceedings. Michael's past caught up with him. Charges of fraud, blackmail, and abuse. His missing wives, found, living in hiding, too terrified to come forward before. Marie testified against him, ensuring he couldn't hurt anyone else. After the trial, she stood outside the courthouse, staring at the steps. I approached cautiously. "What now?" "Start over," I said. She looked at me, tears brimming. "And us?" "There is no us, Marie." She nodded, tears falling. "I'm sorry, Andrew. For everything." "I know," I said softly. "I hope you find peace." She lingered, then walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Months passed. Life slowly returned to normal. One evening, I sat at a cafe with Franklin and Matt. The wounds were healing. Slowly but surely. Matt studied me. "You okay?" I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Yeah. I think I will be." Franklin raised his cup. "To new beginnings." I smiled, clinking my cup against his. "To new beginnings." The three of us together again. Matt studied me carefully, a hint of concern in his eyes. "You okay?" I took a sip of my coffee, nodding. "Yeah. I think I will be." Franklin raised his cup in a toast. "To new beginnings." I smiled, clinking my cup against his. "To new beginnings." As I sat there, surrounded by friends, I realized something. I wasn't the same man I was before. I had been broken. Yes. But I wasn't shattered. I was stronger. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to move forward. Later that night, as I walked through the quiet streets, I replayed everything in my mind. The past months had been a storm, loss, betrayal, chaos, but somehow, I'd come through it. The old me would have been consumed by the need for revenge, haunted by what I'd lost. But now I saw things clearly. Pain changes you. It strips away illusions and forces you to face the truth. And the truth was simple: life moves on, whether you're ready or not. I stopped in front of my apartment building, glancing up at the familiar windows. Memories flooded in, Marie and me cooking dinner, laughing at stupid jokes, planning vacations we never took. I let out a breath. Those moments were gone. But that was okay. Because new moments were waiting. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through my contacts. For months, I'd avoided everyone, family, old friends, too ashamed to explain what had happened. But not anymore. I tapped a name, smiling softly as the phone rang. "Hey," I said when the call connected. "It's been a while. Want to catch up?" The voice on the other end was surprised but warm. "Andrew? Of course. I've missed you." I hung up, feeling lighter. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Healing never is. But I wasn't alone anymore. And as I stood there, the night air cool against my skin, I realized something else. The future wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace. Because endings, they're just the start of a new story.